Howdy, 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 howdy. How are we doing? I hope everyone had a great Easter break, and I did, just in case you were curious. I'm jumping in to discuss today parts, fragmentation, and the reclamation of our parts and why this is important. So many of you know that we have the Awaken Your Wholeness program starting up in under a week now. And I've had a lot of people say, Marina, you posted a lot about parts, or I just did a kind of a long thread as to why not owning a part is actually owning you. I did a post about that if you want to go and read it. And a lot of people kind of came and said, I don't really understand. You keep talking about parts. What even are parts? And it's interesting because inside of particularly any industry, but particularly the coaching industry and the transformational space, there is language that we use often and every day that we assume is in the vernacular of the mainstream. And so I'm sure many of you understand what I mean with parts, but today I just wanted to break it down and to remind all of us as to why the reclamation of our parts is really important. So when we're talking about parts of us, particularly when we talk about parts integration, which is a process inside of coaching to reclaim your wholeness, we are talking about an aspect of your personality or a way of being, a behavior that you have either identified with or you have chosen not to identify with. And this is particularly relevant when we're growing up, because as we're growing up inside of the bathing or in the experience of our conditioning, we are picking up along the way cues, feedback, information that we interpret through the filter of our mind and our existing map, deleting, distorting, and generalizing certain pieces. And we're taking in information around how to stay safe, how to stay in belonging, basically how to survive. And so we are interpreting that from the perspective of, don't go play with wild animals, or, don't touch electric fences, those kinds of things. Yes, from a survival perspective, but also who we be in the world, because we learn through feedback. Think about this inside the house as a young child, or watch any young family. We are getting feedback all the time around what's approved of, what's accepted, and what's allowed. And we're taking in that information, and if we keep bathing in an experience, we start to go, I'm not allowed to be naughty, or I have to be the good girl. Being a good girl gets me a lot of praise. It gets me a lot of love. I get love that way. And remember, love, the feedback of love is coded in our biology as survival, because we are relational beings. If we were not loved upon arrival into this planet, into this dimension, we wouldn't survive, very simply put. So love is survival, and that is why we do so much for the seeking, if you will, of the approval of others. And often we will abandon ourselves, reduce our own worth in our own eyes in the seeking of it in others, because on a biological level, that's why. So how does parts play into this? Well, very simply put, if you're growing up and you are punished for certain behaviors, and here's the thing, maybe you weren't punished, but you heard your family speak poorly or with judgment or rejection of others who displayed those parts, then for the most part, if your desire is to be accepted, to be loved, you're going to reduce the expression of those parts within yourself. So we see this in lots of ways. And let's just start with some examples. So I like to remind people that you'll either disown a part, which means that you potentially brought a part forward and you were kind of bitch slapped. Maybe not even lovingly, but potentially lovingly, and you interpreted it as a painful rejection, and you're like, I won't do that again. And so this could have been anything from being loud and gregarious, and then someone wasn't in the mood for that, they had a headache, and they were like, be quiet, or they were at their wit's end with their own capacity, and they just were like, stop it. And that rejection gets coded in your system. And if that happens enough times, you're like, I am not loved, I am not accepted when I am loud and gregarious. So we shut down our throat chakra, or we basically learn to be quiet. We learn to go with the flow. If on the flip side you were celebrated for being loud and gregarious, then the opposite would happen, right? That part would expand, it would flourish, it would flow. Likewise, if in your family you heard your family talk about rich people or people who are abundant with a negative or in a negative light, then that's where you might leave a piece of you dormant. So I'm just going to it's beautiful, babe. I'm just going to point out that you can disown a part, which means you brought a part forward, it was rejected or judged, and then you're like, ooh, the world doesn't want this. I'm going to shove that back down. And it could be around your sexuality or sensuality, because we're all sexual beings, and at a certain point in our biological development, feelings and hormones kick in, and we have a natural urge. It's natural. And yet society loves to judge and shame us a lot in that space. So if in your family that was rejected or shamed, then you might suppress particularly aspects of your sensuality and your sexuality in an attempt to be the good girl or the good boy. So that's a disowning of a part. When we leave a part dormant, it's maybe because we saw the family reject. And it's not just the family. It could be friend circles. It could be school circles. It's society as well. In fact, there's 3 areas that we will download these learnings from. So as far as the dormant, that's like, well, I can see my family really rejects rich people. I'm not going to be one of them. So we never actually step into that experience. Or we might see, if we're raised in a particular environment, that women who are openly expressing their sensuality and sexuality are shamed through the language of those that we love. We're going to leave that part of us asleep, because we have learned through the filter of our perspective inside of the conditioning that we're raised in to go, oh, you know what? They don't like that. So I won't even awaken it. It's still there. And this is the important point that I like to, when I'm working with women, it's like, just because you are not in the embodiment of your fully expressed sensuality, let's say, or you're fully expressed like abundant, wildly, fiercely, financially, free and expansive woman, doesn't mean it's not available to you. It's just that a part of you suppressed it early on to be in belonging, to be in survival, to be in protection. So that's a dormant part. And then we have this third layer of the ways in which we fragment ourselves. And it's called the distorted part. So it's like, well, this part of the world seems to like it, so I'll let it out here, but I'll lock it away in this part of the world, or I'll kind of let it show up in this way because they seem to be able to receive it like this. So we kind of take a bit of ourselves, and distorting it is a little bit like editing it before we let it out into the world. So we can disown, leave dormant, or distort parts of ourselves. And anytime we do that, anytime we take a piece of our expression and we edit it, we have essentially fragmented ourselves. And this is not like something that one person did, or someone who's broken did, or someone who's traumatized. Every single human walking the planet has fragmented themselves based on their conditioning. And the important thing to remember is it doesn't mean you're living a terrible life. In fact, you can be incredibly happy and incredibly successful and still be fragmented. And the ways that you'll know that you're experiencing a fragmentation is when you see someone displaying a behavior and you get really freaking triggered by it. They are displaying a behavior you have made wrong. Because if you hadn't made it wrong, you'd be like, oh, they're doing that thing that I'm free to do, and yet I choose not to. Because it's different to go, I can do it, but I choose not to, or it's not aligned with me, versus they shouldn't be doing that. Because they shouldn't be doing that is speaking to a rule that you have written about who you need to be in the world. So this is why I always say that our triggers are our teachers, right? And so we write all these rules down as good little kids, learning how to be good. We start to leave dormant parts of ourselves, disown parts of ourselves, like holy heck. I certainly had done that in my own sexuality when it was kind of became apparent to my parents. Their response was not ideal. And I had to work through that. Because my body then numbed down, and I had to reawaken the sensations in my body to reallow the experience of my sensuality, to not have it be wrong. And again, my parents weren't doing anything. They weren't bad parents, but society conditions us, right, to keep us safe. They want us to also not be bad kinds of people. So it's all done in love. And this is, important for us to remember. So why is fragmentation an issue? And you can be like, well, Marina, why is fragmentation an issue? If I'm successful and I'm happy, does it matter if I've disowned these parts? Like maybe that's just not for me. And that's true. There are going to be ways of being in the world that don't align with you, and not doing something because it's aligned or not aligned with you, that's different to fragmentation. That is sovereign choice. That is a conscious, empowered decision around who you want to be in the world. But not doing something because you think it's wrong or shameful or not allowed, that is you living by a written code. So it's okay to go, you know what, it's fine to do it, but I choose not to. So the reason fragmentation is worth exploring, whether you've got parts of you that you have disowned, is because generally, if you have a part of you that's waiting to be expressed, and it doesn't have to be in the sexuality realm, right? It very often is, because society has so much shadow work in that space. But it could even be your creative self when you were super young and super creative or super playful. And as you got older, people were like, that's never going to pay the bills. Just, get real, be realistic. Stop being so silly, be more adult. You've got to grow up. Like, it gets conditioned into us that that full spectrum experience is not welcome here. And I believe that our job in, stepping back into sovereignty and wholeness is going back and going, hey, all these parts that maybe someone at some point made wrong, do I want to re-embrace them? Do I want to bring back do I want to liberate myself to be an expression in that space and in that place and in that way? Because when we do that, we get to expand our expression and experience of ourselves, which is very freeing. And also, here's the irony of that: you feel safer than ever because there's less of you that is wrong. So the other layer, sorry, I'm kind of jumping all over the place, but the other layer to fragmentation that not enough people are aware of is you're actually losing your life force when you keep parts of you wronged. So if I take apart, say it's, abundance, my family's like, we're frugal, we save money, you can't be financially free. And they wouldn't say it like that, to be clear. I mean, maybe they would, but it doesn't make a lot of sense. They often would be like, oh, we work hard, we're always struggling, we can't pay the bills. And that's just their way of being. And then they might see wealthy people and go, oh, assholes. And it's very subtle, but the inner child is taking on all this information and coding. Oh, to be like the people I love, we suffer, we work hard, we don't have abundant things. And so then this piece of you says, don't be that because you're not in belonging. Don't be abundant. Don't earn money easily. That's not allowed for us, right? So when you suppress that part, or you suppress your creativity, or you suppress your playfulness, or you might even suppress your powerfulness because it intimidates people, like it could be any part of you. And in Awaken Your Wholeness, we go through all the parts from all the places, and we really just gather them all up and we explore where we left them, and we explore why, and it all makes perfect sense. And then we get to rewrite the rules. But what we're missing is that in that repression, think about pushing a balloon underwater. Right? It wants to come up. And so you're taking the natural life force energy that it has and wants to be expressed. And not only are you not allowing that energy through, but you're actually putting a lid on it. And remember, force has to be met with equal and opposite force to keep it in place. So now any extra life force you had from other aspects of yourself are going into editing yourself and compressing yourself and contracting yourself to fit this perceived mold of safety and this perceived mold of acceptance and approval. But now you're a fragment of yourself. You don't have all your energy, literal life force energy, like energy to do things. You don't feel fully expressed. So now you're frustrated. You feel unseen. You feel unloved. You feel unworthy because you have made parts of yourself unworthy. It's not the world. And then we're aching, right, to be fully expressed, to be fully seen. But if we've closed all the doors off and we're pushing everything down and we're saying, no, that's not right and that's not right, and I think they want it like this. And keep in mind, everyone else is doing that too. That's the irony. So suddenly it's like, well, they can't see you because you've taken your light and basically blocked it off. You've blocked off who you are. So for someone to truly connect with you and to truly love you and truly see you and truly know you, it's like impossible. Until we go and we open back up all of the shutters and we let all the light out and we say, this is all here. And then from that place, and people think if I do all those things, I would be a wild woman, I would be a wicked woman. Well, maybe sometimes, but in my experience, all that you are is pure white light, energetically on a frequency level. And yes, we get to move through all of the emotional experiences in the spectrum of life, which means sometimes we're sad, sometimes we're angry, sometimes we're excited and blissed out, and sometimes we're just content and calm, right? But if we get to dance in that whole spectrum of our emotions and our beingness, and we get to acknowledge that we're moving through jealousy instead of repressing it and denying it and, pushing it down, because that denial of it now essentially feeds it, because all my energy goes into the repression. And remember, what we resist persists. It didn't go anywhere. As I wrote in the post about this on the weekend, which I highly recommend you read, because if you're interested in parts, it kind of did summarize the 4 ways in which we're draining our own energy by not owning these disowned parts. What was I saying though? So, can't remember. It just fell out of my head. I think the point is that in that denial takes energy, and if you open it up, not only do you get the energy of that part, and it will flow. Like, this is the thing that you thought was wrong generally isn't. Generally, it's not. So I don't know if you've got any questions, but what I wanted to really just cover today, as I mentioned at the top, was what are our parts? What does parts mean? It's not, I don't mean it like the same way you have an arm and an elbow in your physical body. In your identity, in your beingness, you have a playful part, a pleasure-loving part, a curious part, a creative part, a nature-loving part. And just on that, like every human walking the planet has their unique alchemy that will be essentially very differing degrees of expression through each of those. So none of us is the same. But does it make sense that what we want to do is go and feel into, well, is this something that wants to be alive in me? Oh, no, cool. It's just not there. Oh, wow, yes, it is there. Well, then why am I not allowing it out? And most of us can probably already think of, you know, pieces or parts of ourselves that we're not allowing ourselves to be. And what I have noticed with women in particular is that as we take on more roles in life, or we identify as different things, it's like we pick up a whole lot of rules. Like when we step into motherhood, or when, you know, men step into fatherhood, it's like, well, now I'm a mum. Now I can't be a sexy minx, or now I can't be a fierce boss, you know, babe. And now I can't be playful. You know, and if you hang out with my children long enough, they constantly reference just how crazy and childlike I am and when will I ever grow up? And I say, probably never. And I'm okay with that. And they get to see me expressing childlike energy constantly because my inner child is alive in me. And it is a story that we have to grow up and lose our playfulness, right? And all of it is story. You don't have to be any which way. As a CEO, you get to be how you want to be. As a mother or a lover, you get to be who you want to be. As a sister, all of it, you get to be who you want to be. So the invitation is explore what rules you have written. Are they yours? Do they serve you? What else is true? And what would life be like if you allowed these parts to come back into full expression? If you welcome them home, what might you expand into? That's the conversation, that's the question, and it's certainly the work, some of the work we do inside Awaken Your Wholeness. We do a whole lot more. And I will be doing a live this week specifically about that program and why you might want to step into it. Because to be honest, it will make every aspect of your life better and more amazing. So yeah, let me know if you have any questions. Last point on this is really just that when you have parts of you that are disowned, life feels heavy and hard because your life force is being wasted in their repression. And you are not yourself. So it's like you're constantly in costume, you're constantly wearing masks, and that doesn't feel free and it doesn't flow, and no part of you is not welcome on this planet, but you have to welcome it back for the world to see it, for the world to receive it. So there's no point waiting for the world to go, oh, you can be that, oh, you can be that. That's an internal job. And then we hold ourselves in our wholeness, and from sovereignty, we bring ourselves to the world. And whether they like it or don't like it, we hold ourselves. And that's the journey. And then the thing is you're fully free and you feel safer than ever because you won't desert yourself. You're not devaluing yourself. You know your worth and you love yourself regardless of whether others can meet you in that place or space. All right, I can't see any questions coming up. So I'm going to take my girls to the movies. We're going to go see The Lost City, I think, with Sandra Bullock, who is a great example of a playful adult, I think. I don't know her personally, but that's my perceived experience of her. All right. Let me know in the comments if you do have any questions, and if you want to check out Awaken Your Wholeness, which is a 12-week transformative portal that I am guiding an amazing group of women through live. We start in a week's time. Definitely head to the link in my bio, check it out, and our early bird prices end, I think it's either tonight or tomorrow. So definitely keep an eye on that because you can save yourself a couple $100. All right, big loves. Bye.